Hey everybody, Troy here, Quad Standard Labs. We have a ducted Thicc X4 in front of us, which is the talk of the town these days, and a lot of people are looking for these types of solutions. Just a quick preface, we've been working on ducted Thicc slash Finster, which is the Sicario-based version of this X4 design, for over a year. There's been lots of trials and tribulations. We've tossed lots of R&D money, lots of time at this thing. We are finally ready to start shipping units, and we wanted to give an introduction just like we do with all of our platforms. So when you receive it or you're looking to buy it, you know what you're getting yourself into, and you can get this thing out the box and start putting it to work. I like to think we have a pretty good track record of making sure that everything that goes out of our doors is well tested, tuned, and ready to put to work. That's at the heart of the mission here at Quad Standard Labs. Get it out the box and no muss, no fuss. Let's go to work. So with no real further ado, I'm going to kind of start jumping into some things to note. So first of all, introduction to the platform. X4, no landing gear like a traditional Thicc, shorter arms than a regular Thicc, got mounting plates obviously for the ducts. The ducts, we actually do have the molded duct and we have printed ducts. We will probably be shipping units with printed ducts installed, and molded ducts will come in the package for you to use if you'd like. That being said, there are a few things about the printed ducts versus the molded ducts. And if you're wondering why, Troy, would I choose one or the other? I actually prefer the printed ducts for two main reasons. One, the sound. The sound with the printed duct is a little bit lower of a tone, and it's not quite as high pitched. I think that's important for most people when they're working on set and around things and people that, you know, sound is possibly an issue. Number two, the molded ducts, when you do get them from us, will come with some specific spacers that we have printed, and some they're TPU, and they basically are isolators as well as spacers to put them in the right place as well as keep the vibrations down. That being said, you will get slightly higher noise profiles with the molded duct. Still looks great, still flies great, no real problem. However, if you are going to put the molded duct on and try to use it, we do ask that you make sure you do your best to do any kind of pre-testing, 30-second hovers or less, fully loaded with how you're going to be flying it, and check those motor temps and things like that. Speaking of motor temperatures, anybody that's flown any of the Insiders or any of these ducted or caged kind of smaller prop designs that are right at the edge of the limits to lift what we're trying to do knows that motors are going to run warm. Warm versus hot is a really interesting distinction. The facts are motors start breaking down at 185 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the epoxies, glue, and plastics and everything, the composites, start to break down at that point. Enamel also starts to, not really like high heat around that same point, and that's where you start getting in trouble. 185 degrees is almost 2 times the body temperature, which means when you touch 185 degrees, it pretty much burns you. It's right on the edge of boiling, right? 212 is boiling, 185 is a simmer. I used to be a chef. So 185 degrees is pretty easy to spot when you're way up there because you're going to touch it and just instantly almost be burnt. That's not good. We're not trying to get there. However, these motors are going to run hot when you're loading it up. We'll talk about the payload weights and all of that in a minute. But just know when you're running those heavier payloads specifically, or you're really pushing this thing hard, your motors are going to heat up. The motors in the front have a tendency to get a little warmer, which is a little counterintuitive to how our Cinelifters and all of our other platforms really fly. The reason is where the camera is going to be positioned, and most people are going to try to move the camera forward to try to get the lens as far out as possible. Well, that's putting all the weight on the front, and on a platform like this, we're exponentially asking too much of the front end weight. So you need to make sure that we're balancing the CG as much centered as possible between the battery shifting backwards and the camera itself. So again, when we get to the payloads and stuff like that, we'll talk a little bit more about this. But just know that you're really looking to try to center that weight. If you're getting more heat in the front motors, try pushing things back just a little bit. And for that, on the universal camera mount, which I'll show you now, is one of the selections. This here is the universal Andy Shin drones mount. It's one of the options. The other option is our low profile DAC mount. This is going to be kind of the standard going forward on all Cinelifters and all builds that we're doing. We're working on with this mount because it's really low profile, high quality aluminum, really easy to mount to just about any frame. All we have to do is make clean plates for them. So you have the option between the two. On this mount here, obviously, you've got a lot of platform to shift that weight back and forth. You have a little shorter platform here, but the DAC mount also has mount positions that you can shift that mount forward and backward. We're going to be shipping that mount already in the standard location that we recommend. But if you have, maybe a heavier lens or something like that, there's one more slot backwards. And then you also have the adjustment rail here for where you insert your thumb screw. So that's kind of the runaround as far as ducts, printed ducts versus molded ducts. And now we'll just quickly talk about the propellers. So propellers, people have been seeing this prop that HQ made for Andy and technically me whenever we requested it. It was a 6-bladed 5-inch prop. Great little prop for lots of different things. In fact, we run these on Insider 5 inches. Some people are running and they're loving it and it's working pretty good. For some reason, that prop is not really very conducive for these bigger Thicc and Finster and other builds. What we found after extreme testing over the last year, again, where we've thrown a lot of different motors, lots of different ESCs, flight controllers, just lots of things at these builds, we just kept coming back to the prop not really being great for everything. So bullnose 50-45 doll prop. The bullnose is important. It's the most important part because it has that flat edge at the end and not a tip. You don't want the curved tip because you're going to be losing that air gap. So this is one solution. Another solution is to hand cut some 6 or 7 inch props, and you could hand cut those down to 5. And that's one way to get some really nice props in there too if you want them that bullnose. But the doll 50-45, you're going to want to maybe order a couple of sets, though in reality, you shouldn't be really going through props on this thing. So really, you just need a couple of spare sets just in case. However, like we said, anytime you're going to change a prop or change something, even to the ducts, extreme testing, not extreme, but very specific testing of hovering, kind of flying around a little bit, landing, feeling the motors. You're going to get up to that probably 120 to 140-ish degrees range, especially when pushing it hard and pushing it with heavier payloads. So that gets us to the payloads. So we don't really want to talk about all up weights and try to give people this, golden number or rule to go by. Unfortunately, with these ducted builds, what happens is there's a lot of variations, and batteries are the main variation. Battery weight versus what the capacity is, the discharge, and the voltage all to begin with, just all add up to too many variables for us to say use this size battery and fly this much weight in a camera. So what we've done is we've established a kind of rule of 1900 grams. 1900 grams is the total weight you have to put a battery, a camera, and a lens package on the drone. That's at its maximum limits in reality. And I'll tell you that that's basically about a 1400 gram camera package, and a 3300 thunder power, for instance, is one of the ways we were testing. That's about the maximum weight you're going to put on there. That battery is 550 grams, and the camera is going to weigh about 1400. You're in that 1900 gram range. Could you fly more weight? You could, but it's not going to love it, and you're going to have to take more breaks in between flights because of how warm things are going to get. Where is the sweet spot, Troy? For me, I have found two kind of sweet spots, and I'll try to give those as kind of my suggestions. If you're flying a Komodo, you're going to want to keep the lens package as light as possible. The body's 1,000 grams. The lens is going to turn out to be at least 150 to 250 grams. You're in around 1,200 grams. That's a great size or great weight for the Komodo to be flown on this. And if you fly the Komodo with 1,200 grams, I would recommend a 400 gram battery. whatever you can get the maximum capacity and or discharge rate to fit that 4,000 or 400 gram ratio, to have 12 plus 400, you got 1,600 grams. We're still 300 grams below the max. That thing is going to fly pretty darn good. Now, my personal sweet spot, I'm pretty partial to the new BGH1 by Panasonic because of how lightweight it is. I can get a camera and a lens package under 1,000 grams with a Leiawa 7.5 and the BGH1. And that's with a battery on the camera. So that camera, I can fly a 4,400 milliamp, which is about 650 grams, and still be at about 1,600 grams total, 300 below that maximum. And I can get about five plus minutes probably on that setup. With the Komodo and the 3300, we're gonna get 3 minutes, maybe 4. You know, again, you can push those things higher. So maybe you try the 4,400, which we've done with 1,400 grams, and we were at that, you know, 1,900 gram limit. It's definitely possible, and you're gonna be able to do it. But unfortunately, I don't have every single battery in the planet, and I don't have the time to go out and really test all of these different weight configurations and batteries and all of that. We're going to have to rely on, you know, our clients who takes this information, takes our builds, and just test them. So great little platform. It's doing what it needs to do. It's definitely, to me, a better platform than Insider. It's more spread out, which gets all the weight in the center, so it's much more stable. It's not a kind of ball of mass kind of rotating in space and flopping around whenever you're trying to throw it around. But again, it's going to kind of be a little on the edge when you start trying to get to those bigger payloads. So just something to think about. Lastly, the plugs. We provide this with a XT90. It's going to have that on there. We will be providing you with an adapter for XT90 to XT60. And we're doing this because when we start talking about batteries, you can actually lighten this thing up really far. If you run a 1,000 gram camera, you could put like an 18 to 2,200 milliamp battery on this thing, and it will be pretty darn lightweight. And I bet you get at least 6 minutes out of it. If you're running that Komodo on the heavier side, and you got to get that 1,400 gram Komodo on there, you might want to try 1,800 to 2,200. I would lean towards 2,200 because of the weight and all the amperage that it's going to pull. So 2,200, 6S, a lot of those are going to come plugged XT60. Not a problem to use an XT60 plug on this. However, we do recommend, especially when you're trying to maximize your efficiency here, that if you're using a bigger battery like a 22 to 4,400, somewhere in that range, and you can get an XT90, use an XT90. It's definitely going to provide much more, you know, current and kind of keep everything nice and happy with the power draw. So that's kind of the intro and the walk around. I know it's a little longer than our usual intros, but it's a little bit bigger and a little more unusual than most of our builds. So hope you enjoy it. We really look forward to seeing what people start shooting with it. And as things progress and we kind of optimize some things, we'll definitely be updating the video and getting some more information out there. So fly safe, fly smart, just fly. Peace.